Hello.
It's hello.
Hello.
Hello?
Hello there.
Back to the space cooler. Today we're back with what would have happened had Barriss Offee bombed the Chancellor's office instead of the Jedi Temple. Before we begin this video, special thanks to our patrons, voice actors, and everyone else part of my team. Want a chance to win a free lightsaber in the giveaway? Watch the end of the video. I'll tell you exactly how you can win. There's also a animation coming out this week, so stay tuned for that. Get it hyped up. It's before Christmas. It's my early Christmas gift to you all. Our story begins on Coruscant. Outrage in the streets. The Senate building was emitting flames. People in the streets looked at the fires in shock. While no one from the ground level knew which office was bombed, the people who worked inside the building knew. The Senate guards and the Coruscant guard reacted to the scene immediately. As the clones tried to get through the flames, they saw the body of their commander laid out on the ground. A couple of Coruscant guardsmen ran through the smoke and pulled him out. Commander Fox was barely still alive. When they pulled his helmet off, he ordered them to go in there and get the Chancellor. The men traveled into the bomb-ridden Chancellor's office. They searched around, keeping low below the smoke, searching through the debris and through the fire. At the same time, the Senate guard was getting a hold of supplies to douse the fire out. The clones couldn't find any sign of Palpatine or his cabinet members, all of which were with him at the time of the blast. When the Senate guards got the fire extinguished, they got out the bodies of Palpatine and all the cabinet workers. To their surprise, the explosion had carried through many levels of the Senate building. This killed many employees that were hired for several responsibilities within the building itself. Their deaths would be cause for public uproar. The Jedi would be brought in to assist in this predicament, being that there had to be some explanation behind why or how it happened. Because this wasn't the Jedi Temple, the Jedi didn't need to pull Skywalker Atano from Cato Neimoidia, giving the two Jedi plenty of time to carry out their campaign with the 501st. Commander Fox would die in the foyer of the Senate building, coughing up a storm because of the explosion. The internal damage was too much for him to handle, and he died restlessly, worrying about his Chancellor. The Coruscant Guard and the Senate guards began making the entire thing a crime scene. Unlike the Jedi Temple hangar bay, there wouldn't be saved record of what happened here. The clones got to work to clear the wreckage and remove the bodies so that they could identify them. The explosion rocked through several layers of the Senate building, and the fires from the explosion trapped innocent civilians inside of corridors and offices with no way to escape. The clones would remove nearly 70 bodies, most of which were unrecognizable, only being identified by families whose loved ones never returned home. As the investigation kicked into high gear, the Senate would hold an emergency meeting to discuss what they would do to fill the role of the missing Chancellor. The decision would be very difficult, especially this late into the war. Though with the public so despondent outside of the Senate building, the senators needed to react. Most of the people protesting were requesting for the war to be brought to an end, because they had a first-hand exposure to loss because of what they assumed to be causation of the war itself. The people protesting believed that the bombing of the Senate building was a direct result of the war, and Coruscant, capital of the Republic, was recognizing that the war needed to be ended. Many of the Republic senators, especially those up for re-election, realized that they might have to do something against their own personal policies to keep the votes from their constituents. Many of these politicians sided with Palpatine originally, but now that the Chancellor was dead, his movement for more war was weaker than ever. Palpatine was a victim of his own actions, and many of the senators feared for a quick death similar to that of Palpatine's, with the only other worse resolve being that they would lose their re-elections. So the Senate decided to vote on a safe option, someone who not all of them got along with, and someone who could very easily soak up the damage for the people of the Republic. Padme Amidala. It was an odd choice, of course, but this was mostly a political move by opposing members of the pro-war party. The anti-war party was already in her basket, but the opposing party did it in hopes that she would mess up. With Padme running the Republic Senate, she would immediately get to work on resolving issues of the war. At the same time, at the Battle of Cato Neimoidia, this would prolong for a much longer time than intended. Skywalker and Tano would lead the 501st on a heavy assault against the Separatists, and the invasion would be successful at a point. Anakin wouldn't come to find out about the assassination of his close friend and mentor until after he and the rest of the clones secured victory on Cato Neimoidia. The Battle of Cato Neimoidia would be significant as a victory for the Republic, being that had the 501st not won, and the battle would have carried on until the end of the war. For a couple weeks that Anakin and Ahsoka were on Cato Neimoidia, they wouldn't find out about Palpatine's death, nor Padme's appointment to Chancellor of the Galactic Republic. The investigation of the bombing itself was at a standstill. The Republic brought in its best, and yet nothing was discovered other than the fact that nanobots were the causation of the explosion. There was no one on the security recordings, and anyone who was in or around the room hours within the explosion were dead. No eyewitnesses, with no security information. On the other hand, a young woman lay low inside the Jedi Order throughout the past few weeks. Her name was Barriss Offee, and she was currently still the apprentice of Luminara Unduli. She was laying low. She always lay low in general, but it was hard for Barriss considering she was the same age as Jedi Knight Anakin Skywalker. Well, he's technically a master, but so what? And yet she was still regulated to being a Padawan to someone like Luminara. Barriss was fed up in the ways of the Jedi, not because of the code, but because of their refusal to obey said code. Barriss used the nanobots to blow the Chancellor's office up because she believed the Chancellor to be the integral leg of corruption in the galaxy. Truthfully, Barriss had a manifesto written about the failure of not just the Republic, but the Jedi to uphold peace in a galaxy divided. Barriss went back to when she was just a Jedi Padawan and expressed through her manifesto. Barriss believed that the war was against everything the Jedi stood for, and because of their inability to stop the war, when they had the chance, they stood in the way of peace itself. Barriss wrote this manifesto every night on her Jedi tablet, just to erase it entirely when she was finished. Every day she rewrote it because it helped her feel like she was being heard, because if she was caught or found out, she would be executed for crimes against the Galactic Republic. The public backlash to the Jedi would be over the top, to say the least, but she didn't really care about how the public would respond to the Jedi if she was found out for bombing the Senate building. Overall, Barriss knew one thing, that while she was a hypocrite for bombing the Chancellor while being outraged over the Jedi behavior for prolonging the war, she thought she did the right thing. Luckily for Barriss, no one in their right mind would believe the Jedi to be responsible for the bombing of the Senate. On top of that, the investigators were on a hot trail hunting down some of the Senate guards they believed to have influence in the bombing of the Senate building itself. The chase would dissuade the public from believing it was a separatist, allowing Chancellor Amidala to take advantage of the lack of separatist responsibility in the bombing and propose another peace treaty. Dooku would learn of his master's death long before Skywalker would, and he would ponder on what he would do to take the mantle of Sith. Dooku wasn't really, in all actuality, following the Sith. Dooku wanted what was best for the galaxy. This meant the eradication of the Republic and that of the Jedi as well. Without Sidious, he was simply a politician who used to be a Jedi, someone with the ability to wield a lightsaber and use Force electricity. Sure, that's rather condescending, but a true Sith, Dooku was not. His morals aligned to the Sith, but the true Sith Lord technically would be Maul, a man who had nothing but hatred in his heart, not wanting for the betterment of the galaxy. Dooku was appalled to hear of Palpatine's death and realized how out of hand things could get. Having just lost Cato Nemoti to Skywalker and Tano, he would have to regroup the Separatists in the Outer Rim. It was a final year of combat in the Clone Wars, and now the Clone Wars had just become a real war, one of which would have to be won through victory rather than through Order 66. Dooku had no access to the clone army, nothing like what Palpatine had, so he'd have to come up with an idea. Two ideas, truthfully, but the first idea would be ruin Padme's popularity as Chancellor of the Republic, though it would be a bit of a damper on his efforts to defeat the Republic. Dooku thought he could accuse Palpatine of being behind the war effort and suggesting that Padme was too behind the war effort, being that both Padme and Palpatine were from the planet of Naboo. This would make it a plot by the Naboo to submerge the galaxy in the war. While this sounded good on the surface level, the only concern would be the idea that it would give away the entire plot to destroy the Jedi. Without Palpatine, it was worth a shot to destroy Padme's political career as the Republic's leader. Though if Padme recovered this, then the chances are that the Clone Wars would come to a rapid end. Dooku pondered on his decisions. On the other hand, he had another plan, and it involved having Maul join him in a partnership of sorts, not a master and apprentice, but a partnership. Maul was in control of the entire crime family, all of them, and with the war becoming a real threat of simply continuing, he could use the extra reinforcements. Also, having another Sith in the room wouldn't go amiss. Dooku would spend time reaching out to Maul trying to get in contact with him. Maul of course knew about Palpatine's death, but he wasn't keen on the idea of Dooku reaching out to him, assuming it was Dooku trying to team up, to which he was obviously right. Anakin, on the other hand, would be really distraught after learning about the death of Palpatine. This news would hit him not long after returning to Coruscant from Cato Nemodia, and he would be told by his wife, not by anyone else. The word managing not to find its way to him because of the intensity of the campaign and the Jedi not wanting to distract one of their best generals on the battlefront. Anakin was of course outraged that Palpatine had been killed, but truthfully he handled it leagues better than anyone thought he would have, or expected him to. He was angry and very upset of course, but he didn't lose his cool in the same manner he did when his mother died. Anakin believed the culprits would be caught and dealt with. Instead of being overzealous and angry, Anakin was much more supportive of his wife. The reason Anakin's anger wasn't outrageous was because he was more worried about his wife in the moment. She was now Chancellor, and now that meant that she carried a much larger target on her back. Padme assured him that she would be just fine, to which Anakin would suggest to take care of her security detail from here on out. Padme was very thankful, but she informed her husband that she would be fine. Currently, the odds of peace beginning were very unlikely. This is because nearly a year and a half prior, the Separatists and the Republic attempted peace and it didn't really work. It was sabotaged by Palpatine and Dooku, and unfortunately for the galaxy, it didn't work. Padme orchestrated a meeting between the Separatists and the Republic that would be held on one of the neutral systems in the galaxy. The Republic representatives and the Separatist representatives would have an open discussion that would be hard-pressed to find a resolution. But the truth is, Padme knew she would never get anywhere with Dooku if she confronted him about the war. She knew he'd dig his heels in, and the Separatist government, on the other hand, was the only option towards peace, and that currently wasn't working. Though when she became Chancellor, she found out all about Palpatine's secret projects at Kuat, one of these projects being the Star Destroyer project. These vessels were war machines, much larger than Venators with the weapon systems of an entire fleet. These ships were vile, and Padme decided that she would boost production on these vessels, anticipating a war to be prolonged. While Padme didn't want this, it was her duty to the Republic to safeguard the people of the galaxy from the threats of the Separatists. As the war continued, a special case would happen where a clone killed a Jedi in cold blood. Clone Trooper Tup would be taken to Kamino and tested on. ARC Trooper 5s went with them, and through a series of events, ARC Trooper 5s would be taken back to the Jedi Temple. Though without Palpatine unveiling his full plot, there was nothing the Jedi could do with 5's information on Kamino except for try to investigate it. The Jedi would report their findings to Chancellor Amidala, who would agree to the clones having their inhibitor chips removed, seeing no need for them to have them based on how well 5's acted, even after being drugged up by Lama Se, to which the Jedi found out she did. Late into the third year of combat, the Jedi would spread out thin. There would be no invasion of Coruscant. Instead, the Republic would hunt down the Separatists, hidden in the Outer Rim. Because of Padme's boost on the Star Destroyer program, she was able to assign 2 Star Destroyers to Anakin's fleet, one to Kenobi's fleet, and another one to Plo Koon's fleet, to name a few. Since Cato Nemodia was won earlier in the war, Plo Koon would be dispatched to Raxus, the capital world of the Separatists. Obi-Wan and Anakin would head towards Utapau in a fleet double the size. Jedi Knight Barriss Offee and Jedi Knight Ahsoka Tano would be sent out to Mustafar, under the rumors that Separatist vessels were spotted in the area. The war would be in its final leg, and with other Jedi like Ki-Adi-Mundi on Megiddo and Yoda on Kashyyyk, the war would possibly be over sooner than expected. Without Padme missing with the Jedi, Master Skywalker would accompany his old master to invade the planet of Utapau, catching Grievous and his fleet completely off guard. With 3 Star Destroyers, Grievous would see his fleet and his prided invisible hand stuck in a fight it could not win. Over Raxus, Master Plo and his fleet descended into battle with ferocity. His fleet was already large enough, and with the addition of the Star Destroyer, the Separatists were in for a battle of their battery lives. Kenobi and Skywalker would hop into their starfighters and shoot across space, destroying Separatist bombers and fighters, clearing up room for the ARC-170 bombers and the Y-Wings to make critical hits onto Separatist flagships. The bulk of the fleet moved in as well, keeping a solid distance, but enough firepower to keep Grievous stuck without being able to escape. The goal here was to keep Grievous and the droids off of Utapau, and beat them in space to save the clone troopers. The goal was the same for Plo Koon and the Wolfpack, though the only issue was that they actually needed to capture the ground so they could win the war. While Padme was against the idea of a full, all-out war, it was the Seppies who weren't cooperating. Then she had to play not too nice. In the middle of the Outer Rim, Ahsoka and Barriss would sneak onto Mustafar, discovering Dooku's solar sailor landed outside of the main complex. When the two knights noticed it, they immediately called for backup, before groups of commando droids and Magna Guards ran out of the complex looking for them. On the inside of the complex, Dooku reached out to Maul and informed him that it was now or never to join his cause, and so Maul decided that with the chance of the Separatists losing the war, he would hopefully buy the Separatists some more time while killing off one of the Jedi Council's leading members and destroy one of the Grand Army of the Republic's best legions. The battle over Utapau heated up. Skywalker moved in lead of a group of ARC-170s across the whole of the Invisible Hand, while Obi-Wan and a handful of V-Wings laid waste to the escape pod launchers. This having been accomplished, Skywalker would round the hull of the ship and lay waste to the hangar bays, disabling any possible escape route for the general of the droid army. Kenobi pulled his ship around and covered Anakin's back, while Admiral Yularen, commanding a brand new Republic Star Destroyer, moved the fleet into full attack, calling for maximum firepower. This would reduce the shields on their vessels so they could fire a maximum volley into the Separatist fleet. The Separatist fleet began to crumble, and General Grievous on the inside of his ship began to panic. That is, until the Republic Star Destroyer disabled the Invisible Hand's shield generator. Yularen called out an order notifying the fighter squadrons that the capital ship was weak without any shields. Skywalker ripped his ship around the engines on the backside of the Invisible Hand and pushed the smaller fighter to full throttle, speeding over through divers on the hull of the Star Cruiser. Anakin pulled his ship down and spun it back, flying above the Star Cruiser and then barreling back down towards the ship, blasting his cannons, ripping apart the bridge of the vessel and killing General Grievous in the process. The Republic fleet pressed forward and the Separatist fleet crumbled. Wings of LAATs would be dispatched down to the surface to ensure that the droids hadn't created a foothold on the planet. While all was successful over Utapau, the same could be said for Plo Koon and the Republic over Raxus. All was well as the Republic started to crack through the last of the Lucrehawks over the planet when the pirates arrived. It was the unified front of the crime lords in the galaxy. They ambushed blindsided the Republic fleet as half of the support vessels dropped and exploded. Plo Koon, being the excellent pilot he was, pulled all of his men back to defend the fleet, moving away from the offense and holding onto a strong defense. Maul's fleet was backed up by Separatist heavy hitters as well. Dooku had planned on this working, and he was at the very least thankful it was working for now. On Mustafar, Ahsoka and Barriss struggled as they toiled with the Commandos and Magna Guards. They were very strong, especially Ahsoka, and within a short period of time they were able to beat back these droids, to which they would make their way inside of the complex, cutting down every droid every which way, until they arrived in the main room. Everyone was here, Separatist leaders from every Separatist star system, Newt Gunray, Wat Tambor, and Dooku himself. The two Jedi ignited their weapons again, to which Dooku responded using his lightsaber in a show of strength, beating back Barriss and Ahsoka. While both of these Jedi were talented in their own way, Dooku was an expert duelist, and it took someone with similar strength or more strength to have even a hope at beating him. Dooku lunged forward, holding one arm behind his back as he used his dominant arm to block, parry, and strike aggressively. Dooku swung, cutting into Barriss's left arm. Not enough to cut it off, but enough for it to hurt a lot. Barriss stumbled back as Ahsoka took the lead and pushed Dooku back, using both of her lightsabers to do so. Dooku was impressed. Anakin's little apprentice had some skill. She made Dooku stumble a little bit as she threatened him. Dooku ducked under her strike and shot lightning into Ahsoka's back, throwing her into one of the panels, knocking her out instantly. Barriss looked at Ahsoka and raised her lightsaber, feeling weak in her stance. Dooku swung forward, pushing Barriss back, each strike throwing her arms to the left and to the right, flipping her balance off, without a chance to do anything in response. Barriss was thrown from her feet. Dooku looked down at her and held his lightsaber out. Just like he killed Yaddle, he would too kill Barriss. Ahsoka looked over and leapt up, swinging around with ferocity and pushing Dooku off of his feet. The Count stumbled back, blocking and ducking under strikes, weaving between lightsabers from Ahsoka. Dooku thrusted his blade forward, jabbing into Ahsoka's shoulder. Dooku grinned as he dragged his lightsaber up to swing down on Ahsoka, who fell to her knees. As he swung down, his blade was stuck in midair. When he turned around, the word Skywalker crawled out of his mouth. Anakin looked down at Barriss, who was laying on the ground next to the entrance. Anakin ignited his lightsaber and stormed forward. Dooku wasn't ready. He paused, and he tried to meet with Skywalker midway, but Dooku forgot one important lesson. One does not simply mess with Anakin's apprentice. She was like his little sister, and no one picked on Anakin's little sister. Anakin drove his blade forward, cracking down on Dooku's defense, throwing the old man from his feet as his back smashed into the table in the middle of the room. Anakin didn't even hesitate, as his second swing caught Dooku in the chest, killing him instantly. Anakin looked over at Ahsoka. Her mouth hung wide open. The next thing she knew, the boys in blue deployed into the room with their weapons raised, demanding the surrender of the Separatist leaders. Over Raxus, Plo Koon would use his piloting skills to beat back the scrappy pirate pilots. The clones were much more advanced, as they operated as such. The Republic fleet split up, with the support vessels leading a ground invasion past the wreckage of the defense fleet. In space, the Star Destroyer ripped through the remaining fleet of aggressors. Maul tried to escape, but it only led to his demise. It would take time. While the initial capture of the Separatist Council and the Separatist capital, and of course the defeat of Grievous, Maul, and Dooku, would knock the wind of the Separatists, there would still be pockets of fighting until Chancellor Amidala forced the Separatists to abide by the peace talks. The role of Chancellor and the stresses of having to put the galaxy to peace put Padme into a tense situation. But she did what was best for the Republic, even if it was against what she wanted to do, since the Separatists didn't want peace, after all. After the war ended, she would take a temporary retirement from politics. At this point, she and Anakin would have their children. Because Padme was the Chancellor, she had no interest in fun-time activities. When the stresses of being Chancellor came to an end, she was much more interested in said activities. Though twins wouldn't be conceived from such. Rather, Leia would be born first. 2 years after her would be Luke. A year after Luke would be their last son, Eret. During this time, well actually, at the direct end of the Clone Wars, Master Skywalker would be welcomed into the High Council. With the death of Palpatine, thanks to the unknown culprit of the Senate building bombing, the galaxy would find peace. As for Barriss, she would find peace with the Jedi once the war came to an end. Anakin would keep his new, happy life a secret from the Jedi. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is our story. Again, special thanks to Benjamin Wells, Jonathan, Pim Daddy Bane, Icy Raptor, Apollo Mathematics Studios, Anakin003, and Flynn Van Cease for supporting the channel. Hit death and likes in this video. I don't know what's coming next, but it is. We got a video coming out this weekend for Christmas. It's my Christmas gift to you guys. It's an animation. Hope you guys are looking forward to it. It's going to be Christmas Eve. If you can see the well enough, little bit relevant comments, want to do crossovers, check out Twitch, media Discord, and Patreon. In other ways, check out my other channels. Got plenty of other channels. Thanks to our patrons for choosing yesterday's video. The patrons have done a lot for me and help bring this animation to life, so thank you to all of you for helping that happen. So let's talk about our story here. Also, if you want to win a lightsaber down below, write your name on the comment. Don't pay attention to the comments in the comment section. That's not me. I will announce winners in this video or in a video. You will see my face. I've done it before, and that is how I announce winners for giveaways. And let's talk about our story. So, the luck of Barriss, Offee, she's really lucky in this story, and that's kind of intended. The story is kind of meant to give Barriss a luck here, and that's because no one would expect the Jedi to bomb the Senate building. No one would, and I don't believe that without Anakin and Ahsoka getting involved, I don't believe that that Barriss would be caught. Now, the one thing that I'm 50-50 on is Barriss' decision to actually stay a part of the Jedi. I think she would, to avoid getting caught and, accused of treason against the Republic and, die. So I think she would actually stick with the Jedi. And that's the reason why I went down that route, because I don't believe that she would just sacrifice herself for nothing. I don't think she would just be like, oh yeah, I did it, or oh yeah, I'm gonna leave the Jedi Order now. She didn't leave the Order after she did it, and she acted really appalled that it happened. So I think she would continue up that facade until the war actually ended, to which she would come to terms with the Jedi. But I mean, I'm sure that's one of the big critiques that's coming out of this video is why did Barriss stay in the Order? And that's because, I mean, she's not going to join the Sith. She just disagrees with the Jedi being part of the war. And when the Jedi aren't part of the war, then, that doesn't affect her anymore. The plots of Dooku to disrupt the Republic backfiring, with the question mark, that's something that I was going to do originally. I had a lot of ideas for this video. I went through 20 ideas within the last couple hours, and this is what you got. So there's definitely a bunch of other ideas that kind of swung around, and I talked about a couple of them. And that was Dooku kind of trying to disrupt the Republic, but I don't really see him doing that, because I don't really see it actually working in his favor, of him trying to be like, oh yeah, Palpatine was the big baddie, he started the war, because Dooku wants the Republic gone. And I know you guys might disagree. I'm going off of canon Dooku, the Dooku that we saw in Tales of the Jedi, who's like, I don't like the Jedi, I don't like the Senate, this is why I'm joining the Sith, because I just kind of want the galaxy to be better. That's the Dooku I'm going off of. I'm not going off of Legends, I'm going off of that Dooku, as I usually stick to Disney canon in my videos. But I don't think Dooku really seeing this as a feasible option. I think he would lean more towards the Maul option, which is what happened at the end of the story, is I think he would lean towards Maul. And let's talk about the final battle. The final battle I wanted to have fun with. I think it was fun. Personally, I'm a big space battle person. I love space battles. It's called Star Wars. It's, I think it's more about the space battles. When it comes to actual battles, in quotations, like the actual battles that are going on, I feel like having space battles are really cool in Star Wars. Hence the Star Wars. Okay, you get what I'm trying to say. And the final battle, I kind of made the entire final battle in space, and I thought that would kind of be kind of fun. Most of the battles are lightsaber duels. I kind of wanted to do something different. Obviously, you got a little bit of a lightsaber duel between Anakin, Barriss, Ahsoka, and Dooku, which is fun and all, but the rest of it is all space battle, and I thought that would be a different take on it, right? So the Star Destroyers were already part of the Republic fleet at the end, or at Revenge of the Sith, so that's how they won the battle of Coruscant. The Star Destroyers came in, so I wanted to include that. I wanted to have the Star Destroyers a part of the Republic fleet for this because I thought that'd be kind of a cool inclusion. Star Destroyers were very rare to see, obviously, at the end of the Clone Wars, but they did exist in the Republic fleet because Palpatine kind of built them. But they weren't like the Venators. They weren't everywhere, and that's kind of what I wanted to have here. I wanted to have a couple scare Star Destroyers just to show the effect of a Star Destroyer, because Venators are great ships. I mean, I love Venators. I have a little Venator model that I paid like $80 for over here and next to my desk because I love Venators. They're my favorite ship. They're so cool. They're like the most effective ship ever. But Star Destroyers are Star Destroyers. They are killing machines, and that's their entire purpose. Their entire purpose is to obliterate anything, and that's kind of what I wanted to show. Is like the Separatist war machine doesn't stand up to the Imperial war machine, and I know the Star Destroyer is kind of the first implementation of the Imperial war machine, but they're not standing up to that, and that's kind of what I wanted to show off. And the same with the pirates. And kind of something that I didn't talk about, something between the lines for you to read between the lines, is the death of the crime families. Something that Padme is able to help kind of oversee with the death of Maul and Crimson Dawn, as it were, at the Battle of Raxus, having the entire crime families like fall apart. So, anyways, I hope you all enjoyed the story. As always, stay tuned for what comes next. I got some great stuff. I got a great video coming out for Christmas Eve. I might release it early, so smash that like button. And I also have something planned for Christmas for you guys, something that I think you guys are all going to like. So anyways, I love you all. Spread the love, and always remember, my friends, may the Force be with you.